Welcome to the third volume of GLL Meet and Greet session. This time we're meeting with the third Baltic provider of financial services, LUMINOR GROUP. And I hope that everybody is well at this situation. Remind me, did I introduce myself? Probably not. I'm Aušra from Global Lithuanian Leaders Organization. I'm managing this organization. And here on the panelist as a panelist today, I have actually three ex-diaspora people who had lived abroad, who had studied abroad, worked abroad, and currently they're living and working in Lithuania. So I hope it's going to be a very interesting conversation with them, especially for people who are looking for some career opportunities and in Lithuania. Precisely at meet and greet sessions, they are part of this GLL Talent Reach program, and we created this space for Lithuanian companies to be able to present themselves to professionals in Lithuanian diaspora, and vice versa, for professionals abroad to learn more about career opportunities and working culture in our country. Current circumstances, COVID and also the Brexit, push many people to reconsider their country of residence, and we observe more and more people within the diaspora looking for into the direction of Lithuania. And as I was mentioning before, it is in Lithuanian, it is a very pleasant note that or news that Lonely Planet had announced Vilnius among top 10 global cities for expats. As I was saying, that for people who had lived abroad for a quite substantial time, coming back to Lithuania actually feels more like once more migrating or emigrating rather than coming back. Well, I think that all the panelists will be able to correct me if I'm wrong. And so the main idea of those meet and greet sessions is to open the possibility for Lithuanians living abroad to have a direct talk with management of Lithuanian companies. Therefore, we deliberately devote sufficient time for Q&As, which is a privilege which is reserved only for live attendees. Otherwise, this event is recorded and will be made available publicly later. So without further ado, I would like to present the company, to tell a little bit about the LUMINOR company and the main facts. And I know that Mindaugas, Andrius, and Barbora, who are today on the panelist list, they will extend further. So the LUMINOR is the first financial service, third financial services provider in Baltic region. The bank was born as a result of merging the Baltic operation of Scandinavian banks, DNB and Nordea. It also has corporate partnerships with global investment firm Blackstone. LUMINOR's customer base in all Baltic states is 1.3 million clients, and it employs over 2,300 people. As much as I read, currently LUMINOR is going through some major digital transformation, and they just completed client-based transition into unified system, and now they're entering into a new phase of digital transformation, and I suppose that Mindaugas will elaborate it a little bit. So as far as I talked to people from LUMINOR, they said that this transition from this merger process, which actually lasted for 2 years and finished only at the beginning of last year, this constant change, it actually became a core of how LUMINOR is working now. And to mention as a kind of a nice detail, a cherry on the top, is that the last year, Luminor was announced as second top employer in the financial sector in Lithuania, according to the survey conducted by CV Online platform. I don't want to take all the space of this meeting, and I will introduce our panelists tonight, who's Andrius Načajus, head of corporate banking at Baltics, and a board member at the Luminor Group. He will talk about this process of Luminor's transformation. Hello, Mindaugas. Hello, Andrius, I'm sorry. Andrius?
Hello.
Andrius has lived and studied and worked in pretty much all countries around the Baltic Sea, as he said. And however, he decided to settle in Lithuania in 2002, and ever since he works in the financial sector, right?
Yeah, that's correct, Aušra. Shall I kick off my then monologue?
Just a second, I will introduce Mindaugas and Barbora. And Mindaugas Tutlys is a head of service and marketing products department in Baltics. And Mindaugas had re-emigrated to Lithuania after studying in USA, and later he moved to Japan and returned to Lithuania in 2002. Therefore, his remarks about the Eastern people and the silence, who heard about it. And our third panelist is Barbora Guobytė-Navickė, talent acquisition and employer branding lead in Baltics. And we will have a Q&A session with Barbora about what it is like to work at Luminor. Barbora herself worked and studied in the UK until 2016. Later, she joined Invest Lithuania as a project manager of strategic change. Also worked as a strategic change project manager for the government of Lithuania to build a systematic talent attraction and retention policy in Lithuania. So actually, she can talk about the talent attraction and also working in both public and compare working in public and in private sector, the peculiarities. Now we will have 20 minutes for each guest speaker to present their topic, and after each presentation we will have 10 minutes for question and answers. And you can enter your questions into Q&A box in the lower toolbar. And please do not enter your questions into a chat room because it is not monitored for questions. Only use Q&A box, which is in the lower toolbar. I guess this is it from me. I strongly encourage again to take this opportunity. You're participating live and you have ability to ask questions and get answers. And without further ado, I'm transferring my word to Andrius.
Thanks, Aušra, for many kind words. I don't know if we deserve them. So as Aušra said, I'm heading a corporate banking practice in Baltics. I'm also heading Lithuanian branch of Luminor. And I've been with Luminor since day one, and also been with the predecessor bank for quite a while, since actually agricultural Lithuanian Bank of Agriculture times, when it was bought by Nordel B. Let me then share my screen, tell you a few words about myself and about Luminor's story or journey so far. Share. So Aušra, please nod if you see full screen now, if you're happy. Yeah, you're good. Yes, so as Aušra said a bit, I myself, I mean, many of you, I mean, live much further out than I was living. This is my, this is my map. This is what shaped me as a person. So I lived pretty much in all the countries around the Baltic Sea. as maybe some of you already were not born and lived in an apartment house like this, where I lived most of my life in Kaunas, typical Soviet bloc. I actually went to high school in Norway back in 1993, I think it was, on a kind of cooperation project between Kaunas city and Vestfold fylkeskommune in Norway. It was a big shock for me back then, because coming right after post-Soviet environment straight into Norway, into high school in Norway. And this is actually a picture of what grade 12 does pretty much. They don't go to school, but they party. They have these big red buses, red pajamas, and they pretty much party all the time. And that was a bit of a shock for me, coming from pretty much Soviet upbringing and being head of the pioneers in school. From Norway, I went, back to Kaunas. You see, still bus. Couldn't afford a plane. And after finishing my high school in Kaunas, I went to study in Riga, in Stockholm School of Economics in Riga. It was and still is the top business school in the Baltics. After Riga school, I already had a car. I did some very profitable internships in between, and I went to Tallinn and I worked in back then it was a daughter company, investment banking daughter company of Hansabank, now Swedbank, in the area of M&A advisory. From Tallinn, I took a plane already. My life was getting better and better. So I took a plane to Stockholm and I studied for master's degree and had a scholarship from Wallenberg family in Stockholm School of Economics in Stockholm. And after Stockholm, for me, and that was long ago, that was a decision time in 2002 to move. And I had basically two options. I had an option to move to London. I had an option to the junior position in Merrill Lynch back then, in the M&A area, or move to Vilnius, more immediately jumping to a kind of mid-level managerial position. And I remember talking to my boss in Tallinn. I said, what should I do? And he was, telling me he's a many years Goldman alumni. He was telling, you have to answer yourself, Andrius. Do you want to be a kind of big fish in a small pond, or small fish in a big pond? And after scratching my head for a long time, I chose the small pond, but being a big fish. Actually, I don't regret it. I think it's really good. I think the quality of life that I'm having I'm happy with it. Career opportunities, the quality of life in Vilnius in the Baltics, I think is very good if I compare to what the alternative would be if I went to London. So that's my story very shortly. And I've been working in the predecessor bank of Luminor, Agricultural Bank. Afterwards, it was NordLB, then it was DNB. It's the fourth name already. Pretty much the same bank, going, of course, through a few acquisitions and mergers. Today's my responsibility is primarily corporate banking across the Baltics, which also includes a small investment banking operation as well. So going then to Luminor and what Luminor is. It is a pan-Baltic bank. It's the only truly pan-Baltic that is one legal entity. It's run across the borders as one institution. And what we really believe in is that we need. These economies are past of a need to really be serviced only by, for example, Scandi or foreign banks. These economies are rich enough. They're fully deposit funded, and we are funding actually Swedish economy with our excess deposits. There is enough of talent and enough of skill to actually have a independent pan-Baltic institution that is managed and out of here in the Baltics. And that's what we say. I mean, we really want to make it a sizable bank for local countries, for the Baltics that is present here and is not directed out of Oslo, Stockholm, or somewhere else. We are, as Aušra mentioned, the third largest bank. Our footprint is roughly 16–17%. Across the Baltics, somewhat higher market shares in Lithuania and somewhat lower in Estonia. And what we say is, and this is our positioning, is that we are the only kind of local, meaning that all of our decisions, from products to pricing to markets to risk are taken here in the Baltics and not somewhere in the headquarters. Of course, we have a local smaller competitors in each of the markets, but they do not, of course, have the scale that we do. We've done some data, some cleanup of our customer base. It's a bit less than 1 million customers. Capital is, I think, is definitely sufficient, more than sufficient for operations in the Baltics. Very highly capitalized, and our asset base is around 10–11 billion euro. What I think is also what is different, not I think, what is different from what sets us apart from other financial institutions, and that's I think this is one of the worries that many people have. Or maybe I presume that they might have once they decide, to move from London or Stockholm to the Baltics, is that, well, and that they are very much local, right? You have only local people. You have Lithuanians who have never been outside, and there's no international angle to it. There's been a tremendous change. If I observe, from 2000 to 2020, there's been a tremendous change in that respect. And these are the flags as just actually the nationalities that I quickly, in 5 minutes, connected with the people that I know that work in Luminor. Going back up. So it's of course Scandinavia. I have some Swedes. At least one Finn, of course, the Baltic countries, Russia, Germany, Italy, States, and UK. Somehow UK fell off the chart here, but we have quite several people from UK. And what is interesting is that, if in 10 years ago, we only had, could say, this, what we call love immigration, or people moving because of spouses. We've seen, definitely a few cases where people move because of a job content. Is it from Italy or UK because they find actually the change and the challenge very inspiring, and they move here, right? And it's also Baltics are becoming fairly attractive as a place to live. There is a lot of space, there is a lot of change, and also the assignment that they're given for them seems to be quite motivating. So, and this is not as it used to be. I remember previously. So you tended to have in the Baltic companies a boss from Sweden, and all the people working underneath local people. That's not the case, right? Our top person today, at least, is Estonian. Will be Austrian from New Year, but you have people from these other kind of Western countries working across different levels in the organization. Yes, and of course, one of the big things in Luminor is that we had and still have on the really finalizing now, is that we had a big transformation, since 2017 when we merged two banks, or more than two banks. We had three different self-standing banks owned by DNB in each of the countries, and we had branches of Nordea in across the Baltics. So that was the first stage. It was, and I'll talk a bit more about it, what it entailed. It was merge of these three banks and stabilizing it. Where we are almost finished with what we call second stage, simplifying, fixing balance sheet, and improving productivity. And now the fun should start finally when, you know, we have the good base, we have the good balance sheets, and we can finally start growing and looking more outwards than we've done so far. In terms of transformation, there's been, of course, many of things done in the past, 3 years, from merging itself to starting of balance sheet optimization. Maybe what I would highlight from first stage, which was very impressive, you know, given the many conflicting tasks that we had, it was of course a merger into one single entity. So today we are we carried out a three-way merger: Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, merging the three separate banks into one, headquartered in Estonia, and running as a branches across the three countries. What would probably typically what we see in other countries or other organizations take 3 or 4 years as a project. We did it and completed in 12 months. The second stage, simplification. Some of the things we are completing, like simplifying infrastructure or getting rid at least of previous banking platform of Nordea, because up to summer this year we were one bank legally, but we were running 4 or 5 separate banking platforms, which is costly and not very customer friendly. So that is being finalized. Digital bank, daily banking, not much we have done yet. We are behind here, frankly. We needed to reprice our credit portfolios to make us more profitable, and of course also diversify our funding. This is attract deposits, issue several types of bonds, and so forth. So that was done. COVID has hit us, and as many, most of us, majority of us, are able to work remotely. Yeah, and dealing, you know, with a credit deterioration, which didn't happen, but we were prepared that there would be a major credit deterioration. It didn't happen, and so forth. And now, of course, hopefully, you know, we're entering the third stage, which is what we call growth, when we're able to harvest and reduce our complexity, reduce our costs on the technology side, and start building something that is needed in the market. It's much better digital products and a modular technological platform. And we need to increase market presence as well, having gone through this major transformation. And this is a bit, you know, putting some dates on, you know, some of the key dates. You see that the agenda has been quite packed. Many things have been achieved, both, you know, coming out in the unsecured market, issuing the first covered bond out of the Baltics at a negative yield, cross-border merger I mentioned, and migrations completed, customer migrations, banking platform in Lithuania and Latvia to be completed in a few weeks' time in Estonia as well. Yes, and you know, if I remember when we set out the initial journey, saying that we'll complete the IT migration, become independent, full independent bank, fully funded locally and profitable, standing on our own feet in 4 or 5 years' time. And that was initial timeline. Then Blackstone came in with their own ideas, and Blackstone, you know, being a classical private equity house, said, "You have guys very good plans, but please complete them in 12 months rather than 3 or 4 years." And so we needed to accelerate big time. And when we said that, you know, many people said that our initial plan was a bit crazy and not possible. So it was just shortened to 12 months rather than 36 months. And then, of course, I mean, you have all the good and bad, right? You have, of course, big workloads. You have kind of lots of changes. But for the people that like them, the people that like challenges, I think it has been at least an interesting place to be in through this transformation. Hopefully now we'll be entering also the stage which will be more positive, in a sense that it's not only, you know, reducing the costs and merging the IT platforms and rebalancing our balance sheet, but also going out in the market and winning our fair share of business. So that's very briefly, Aušra. I've saved, I think, you some time. Now I only need to find the, or maybe you will help me to stop share. Oh, I found it.
Okay, thank you, Andrius, for your presentation. That was very interesting, actually. It made me think, by the way, while I'm asking the questions, I'm reminding everyone that you can put your own questions in a Q&A box, which is in the lower toolbar. But before I have any questions, I have one myself. I'm thinking, like, you have been going through this transition for 3 years, and we have to acknowledge that transition requires different skills than your new stage will require. That means the growth, right? So how do you plan any major changes in your talent base, or how are you going to handle this transition, the internal one, from changing the team's focus to make everything work to growing?
Yeah, that's a good question, and you see first changes already, and they are public. Erkki Razake is stepping down. Erkki is extremely capable and hardworking person, and there's also one of the reasons is that shareholder or Erkki and others deem that we need a bit of a different person to take us to the third stage. So Peter Bosek is coming in. He is currently yet head of CEO of Erste Bank in Vienna, Austria, and he is actually been responsible for major comeback of Erste in Austria, and digitalization and the launch of digital bank across several markets. So that's basically one of the examples how we're tackling it. So I think one of the changes we will see more is we'll see some top people change. This is one, and then of course we need to work big time with our culture, which has been very much fighting the fires and doing the projects. But now we need, of course, to look more outwards and see how we can create value for our customers.
Well, I think this is going to be a big task for Barbora. That's why she's change manager in many previous of her positions, strategic change. That means now you need a cultural change within the company, right? I was wondering what language actually are you using as a corporate language, as the main language, because you said that there are nine people from 9 different countries working in Luminor Group. So
no, it's only English. It's only English, and this transition, if I look at the previous organization, DNB Lithuania into Luminor, I mean, it has become much heavier in English. So if you look, actually, most of our processes and procedures, strategies, they're all in English only. There are some operational documents for, let's say, branch employees, which are maybe also adopted in local language, but it's predominantly English. Luckily for us as well, I mean, our regulator is ECB, so all English material comes in hand as well. But it's not only process, procedure, strategies, but let's say all credit applications, all customer files, everything is in English.
So how come I know that most of the client base and most of the loan portfolios are actually coming from Lithuania, but then the headquarters of Luminor Group is in Estonia. How come?
Oh, it has been a very kind of pragmatic decision at the time of the creation. The evaluation was done, what is the best base to base ourselves, and multiple factors played. Taxes, regulatory environment being probably the main ones, and those factors meant that Estonia at that point of time was a more attractive base to register the headquarters.
Okay. Does that mean that, like, where do you work yourself from? I mean, on a regular basis, not when it's COVID-19, but do you have to work in Estonia, or you have a base in Vilnius too?
No, I am based in Vilnius. So I travel, of course, used to travel a lot to Riga and Tallinn, but I am based in Vilnius.
Okay. Okay, do we have any more questions from the audience? Well, let's maybe give some time a little bit to warm up, and maybe thank you for now, Andrius. We will still have more time left at the end of the event, so I'll ask you to bear with us and stay till the very end. And oh, we have one question maybe. Okay, so we have, I will read one question that we have from Simonas Imaitis. Hello, Simonas. Simonas is our supporting member. He's from UK. He was planning to move to Lithuania, as far as I remember, the last time we spoke in summer. So question to Andrius, growth stage, where is the midterm growth going to come from? Can't help but notice that the 3 is a significant funding gap. There is a significant funding gap in the region for SMEs, depending on who you ask. 1 to 5 billion euros per year in Lithuania alone. And from the personal experience, everyone I know in SME segment is complaining to non-existent coverage by top 3 banks. So given that no major credit deterioration has come from COVID, will Luminor look at the SME segment or see growth elsewhere? Thanks. That's a tough one.
Yeah, that's coming from Simonas, right? So it needs to be a tough one. Yeah, I think it's a right remark in a sense. In general, if you look, at I don't know what exactly you meant by funding gap, but I mean, if you look at the leverage ratios, Lithuania is the least levered country for corporate clients of legal entities in European Union, right? So on one hand, you have the best economy, probably also one of the best outlooks. On the other hand, you have a debt to GDP, legal entities debt to GDP, 35%, which is at the very, very bottom in the European Union. So how come, right? And frankly, there is 2 factors. One factor, yes, I mean, there has been a very deep crisis, and people just became more conservative, and that's true. I mean, they have been more conservative, and businesses especially. But there is, of course, another thing. Another factor is the banks have been fairly conservative. Because of course you have a very consolidated market, and the lending standards have been quite conservative. So for us, the growth, and we do want to grow in the SMEs. We think that the risk-reward profile is very good. We do not want to do a very wide coverage, in terms of geographical coverage. We do not want to go back to having branches in every single small town or a village, because it's just very costly and not sustainable. But in terms of creating possibilities or tools or risk acceptance to the level that would allow companies to increase their activities by getting better access to funding, this is one of the cornerstones of what we actually want to do, because we frankly very much believe that there could be a significant credit expansion in specifically SME segment in both Lithuania and Latvia, to a small extent in Estonia, where the ratios are already at roughly European level.
So thank you from Simonas, and thank you from me, and thank you, Andrius, in general. I think that now we will move to another panelist, to Mindaugas. We will still have Andrius here to ask questions later, and Mindaugas himself, who had lived in both directions of the world, United States and Tokyo, now being in this middle road. So you're going to talk about what does it mean to create products in Luminor, right? About the product creation process.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I don't have as impressive, how to say, living area as Andrius has. I have lived only in two countries, the US and Japan, and a little bit in UK. But I think I can comment also on why coming back to Lithuania. And I think for me, coming back to Lithuania was very much related to nationalistic feelings. This was the main reason. I thought that this is possible to get something done in Lithuania, possibilities to do something much bigger than in let's say in US or in Japan. But in general, also after coming back, I think the key difference is of course being in the big countries. Your path is very much going to a specialist, very how to say, good specialist role, while in here you have a much wider possibility on taking wider roles. So a couple years after coming back from Japan, I was heading markets in DNB and overseeing both M&A, private banking, FX and derivatives, economic research, retail investment products, so and also being part of executive team. So there's no way I could have achieved that in let's say Japan. So that's was the driving factor for me, just coming back to get something done that you couldn't do it in a bigger market. I'm working in Luminor as head of savings and markets products, and we are creating services related to investment, foreign exchange, and risk management, either be it via derivatives or insurance. One of the problems that we are facing in my area is that in the Baltics there is no investment into securities tradition. Securities portfolio of private individuals consist of barely 10% of the deposit base. While if you take EU average, that's 50%. And then most of the securities portfolios are in the hands of private banking clients. So if you take them out from the middle class, really there is the ratio is only 3%. So as a consequence, the investments or savings of Baltic households is extremely ineffective. And our aim at Luminor is to change the situation. Well, that's all good, but the problem is that, of course, very small percentage of households or private individuals in Lithuania ask to invest in securities. Up till now, the local practice has been that to give a financial advisor who would spend an hour consulting the client, and then the client would invest. The problem is that the good financial consultant costs just like a good doctor. So 1 hour would cost 80 to 100 euros. And the difference from the doctor is that we can't charge 80 or 100 euros to the client. The bank earns from commission, and the average household would have 10,000 euros commission, which basically earns 30 euros per transaction. So what we have is that we spend 100 euros in consulting, and then we earn 30 euros. So there's not really an easy possibility to offer securities to middle class. This is good for private banking, but for middle class that doesn't work. So what do we do? So that's there's nothing new about digital platforms. There's tons of platforms in the market, such as Interactive Brokers, eToro, and so on. However, those platforms are really designed for professional traders, which Lithuania has only a couple thousand. So our aim, what we're targeting, what we're trying to do in Luminor is actually to improve the financial competence of the middle class. So we need a different type of platform. We need pretty much IKEA of securities, simple, transparent, and a place where you can buy pretty much anything. So we partnered with some Scandinavian banks and actually created this Luminor investor platform. And the platform that was really targeting not traders, but common people. For one, Luminor platform offers only non-complex financial instruments. This means that you don't need to have any knowledge to invest into this platform. Second, we actually spend quite a lot of attention into the transparency. The banking industry in general has been quite complicated when it comes to fees. There's a lot of fine print, and we thought that this is too complicated for normal average person. So we spend quite a lot of time ensuring that it's very, very transparent. We are the only ones in the market that before any transaction, we show not only the acquisition cost, but also the custody fees and also the selling back fees. So basically, the person has to understand that unless he's buying bonds, he will have to pay two fees, both acquisition and selling back, to realize his profit. And the third is what we did is we really tried to do it very simple selection process of the securities. I mean, if you are a normal person and if you come in and there is 15,000 securities, where do you start? How do you select this? So what we try to put is put filters and sorting based on something very fundamentally simple criteria, such as the most popular shares, or the shares with the most recommended shares. This is based on analyst consensus, or the cheapest funds, meaning that the funds with the lowest management fees. So this will give you easy to select. So we launched the platform, Lithuania, Latvia, end of last year, Estonia, beginning of this year. So far, we have collected 250 million euros of assets. So we took pretty much a leap of faith, launching the platform, which no one seemed to need, because the regular people did not think of that we need this platform. We launched it, and it paid off, I would say. So the moral of the story is that if you want to succeed in launching something new, you need to have three things. For one, the hardest thing is this leap of faith, when you need to invest into something that nobody has done, and there's really difficult to expect the results, to estimate the results. For us, what helped us a lot is actually the fact that our owner is private equity house. The private equity companies invest into companies that have breakthrough capabilities. If their investment is growing, if the company that they invest is growing at the market, then they're losing the money. Therefore, these private equity investors, they are much more encouraging initiatives and are much better in tolerating the risk associated with these initiatives. It's pretty much build fast, fail fast, move on to the next project type mentality. The second aspect that really makes a difference is partnership. Our markets are really small. I mean, especially in financial, at least in financial area, Baltic markets are tiny. It is really difficult to build something for such a small market. SEB and Swedbank both have investment platforms, and where you can buy a few hundred securities. Our platform has over 14,000 securities. So this is basically a mom and pop shop versus IKEA. And there's no way we could have done that ourselves, whether we can deliver it or maintain it ourselves. So the global partnership is the key. And the third and the last thing is that on which the success is built is really the client base. Luminor has almost 1 million clients. And so there is quite obvious that to get 250 million of assets without a big client base would be really, really difficult. So to conclude, I think if you want to fundamentally change the consumption habits, if you really want to leave substantial input into improving the life in Lithuania, you need three things: the courageous shareholders, open global partnerships, and access to a client base. So that's that.
Thank you, Mindaugas. I think that was rather very clear messages, right? I hope you are enjoying what you are doing. It seems you are, like, as far as I see, you're always smiling, and it's actually very refreshing at this dark period of the year, combined with the always sitting at the screen and not being able to communicate with people live. I actually talking about those the human side of this COVID situation. Recently there were a lot of talks about that leadership through the COVID situation has to get more humane face, and we have to care for each other more and show more compassion both to colleagues and both to our employees, and also take care of not only physical health but also about the mental health. So therefore, I have, as I mentioned at the very beginning to you, I have to each of you, I have questions, surprises, which are just to cheer up a little bit the situation, our conversation. So this is my first question. Is going to go to you, and my question is, when was the last time you did any physical activity outside of your house for at least an hour?
So for me, it was today. Our office is closed now, but I'm actually walking to the office building and back, just to have a little exercise. So
really, you are getting up in the morning?
Yes,
and
I don't go to the office. I turn around and go home.
Oh, that's I would say that's a curious. That is a curious habit. Do you do that every day?
Yes, now I do that. So.
Do you also do it in the evening?
No. No, one nice morning, nice walk. It's a nice walk. So.
And how long does it take?
It takes an hour, back and forth.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah. So it's quite some walk, right?
I think that's one of the things that Vilnius is great. I think, you know, that you can walk to the office and it's not even on the street. I walk by the river. It's really great. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
How do you feel it affected all this working from home, especially? Of course, we talked a lot about it during the first wave, but now that we're having a second wave, it is a little bit different somehow. How do you feel it's affecting the moods of your teams and also the effectiveness of work? Like, what challenges do you face, or maybe on the contrary?
I think during first wave, the first month or so, we were so preoccupied on getting all the banking remotely, get all the systems. The bank has so many systems and so high security things, so requirements. So there was a lot of work getting out everyone's on remotely. Now it doesn't feel at all. The second wave is really light. In a way that everybody learned to work, all the systems work. So it's it's nicer to see colleagues, but it's not that difficult work-wise. Yes. The productivity, I think, is not decreased that much.
Okay. Do you have issues, for example, of saying to people like, you know, we tend, when we don't have a certain space to work, then we tend to extend our working hours. And how do you, as you as a team leader, how do you manage that? Like, do you observe that people like would not overwork? Or do you don't, or you
well, you can't switch off their computers. So, but in general, I think the people who tend to work late, then they tend to work late at home as well. So, I don't think there is that much of a difference in the working habits. I think there is a little bit, maybe people work a little bit longer because there's no commute. But I think they finish work at the same time. They start eating dinner or whatever at the same time. So.
Okay. So anyway, thank you, Mindaugas. I see that everyone is very slow at giving questions. We had so many last time, and this time I feel like I need to do something to wake everybody up, and let's our brain start working, and let's have some questions. Oh, we have one. A question from Rassan, a question to all panelists. Actually, what was difficult and what was nice when you moved to Lithuania, both work-wise and personal life? Maybe Mindaugas, you can answer, and then we move to.
Okay, I don't want to take all the ether, but okay. I think to me, I was moving from Tokyo, so the space was really nice, and also what was nice was that I had time for life. It was you know, you go to a park, that's 10 minutes walk and you're in a park, and you know, so Vilnius is really, I would say, quite livable city. It was really you have more time for yourself, you have more access to greenery, and there's no need for commute. You can really afford to live close to the office. So that's that was the easy. What was difficult? I think coming from big city again, and this is probably the same for anyone moving from big city to a small kind of village type of environment. It is you're missing a lot of this international kind of vibe. You know, there's it's changing nowadays, but when I came back, this was still maybe a little bit difficult in that respect.
Okay, so Mindaugas, we will thank you and we will let you off the hook, and we hope that if we have some more questions, we will still have you available until the end of this event. And now we are moving to Barbora, Guobytė-Navickė, Talent Acquisition and Employer Branding Lead for Baltics. Thank you, Barbora, for your patience. I know that how sometimes frustrating it could be to just wait for your turn to talk. But on the other hand, you can fill in the gaps, what you've heard with your colleagues saying, and kind of put the dots on eyes, like where what has not been emphasized enough, in your opinion. So you said you would talk a little bit more about what it means to work in Luminor.
Yeah, so thank you, Aušra, and as you said, I'm currently working in Luminor in the recruitment and employer branding field. I joined the company just over a year ago in September last year. But probably how I got here is a little bit more of a different story. I also actually grew up in the US. So my parents were the ones that decided to leave Lithuania when I was 5 or 6 and went off to the US for this better life. So that is where I grew up the majority of my schooling life. After that, we actually moved to the UK. Where I finished then school and then also bachelor's. And during my bachelor's degree, I started to fly to Lithuania like 4 or 5 times a year and came to Vilnius and realized that every time I came back, these like 2 or 3 months, something had changed, and there were new like cafes and new companies. Many international companies at that point were also establishing. So I started to kind of gain this interest that, you know, Lithuania is this area where things are changing quite quickly, and it started to seem very interesting to me. After I started to do research about kind of what kind of career opportunities you can have, then I made the decision actually to come back here. And you can imagine the conversation I had with my parents at that time, who were living also in London with me, that, you know, I said, I'm going back to Lithuania, and no one understood. They were, what are you doing? We spent so much effort to, you know, bring you out of Lithuania, and now you're going to leave everything and go back. Like, what are you doing with your life, kind of? But the decision was made. I wanted to go back for this also quality of life aspect of it. And I was a little bit tired of this, you know, spending 2 hours on the train in London, going back and forth all day, and realized that you can still have interesting career opportunities here. And you don't have to sit for 2 hours on the train. So that was very, you know, one of the motivating factors that encouraged me to come back. Once I did make the move and started working here at Barclays at the time, also decided to further my studies in the HR field, as that was what I had been doing also in London previously, and got accepted to London School of Economics, and really did not want to go back to London because I spent, you know, the effort to come back. But made the move once again back to London. And then second time around, when I came back to Lithuania, this was really the time where during my studies, I had rediscovered kind of the politics side and the public sector at LSE. And when I joined, when I came back to Lithuania, I actually decided to join the public sector here and still maintaining this talent attraction topic and really contribute to the public sector and work in the area of talent policy. So joined the program called Create Lithuania, which I'm sure most people have heard of. And during that time, got to work with the startup ecosystem here in Lithuania and create the startup visa, which was a platform for people from third country nationals rather to get job permits here and set up their businesses in Lithuania. And then after that, moved to the Prime Minister's office, where I spent the next 2 years working in the whole talent, migration, and diaspora kind of policy. After those 3 years, I made the decision that I should go back to HR and back to what I was trained essentially to do, and started to look into what was interesting, like more interesting projects in HR in the private sector. And that's how I ended up at Luminor, actually, because the HR sector is something quite specific, I think, in Lithuania. So Luminor was a little bit more of an interesting situation when I attended one of the interviews, and my manager actually told me about this transformation, very much what Andrius was saying previously. And I thought, you know, like, wow, from HR side to support an organization that is going through such a change, it should be very interesting. So actually that's what I wanted also to share today about through that kind of side about what it's like to work with us. And let me just try and share the screen and let me know what you can see. And if you can see.
Yes, we can see it, and maybe you can just put it on the full screen.
Yeah. So I think what's important to also understand is that Luminor is an organization, as colleagues have said before me, that is going through this change and that has gone through the change for the past few years. And when we talk about our kind of who we are as an employer and what it's like to work with us, I think that this change has definitely become kind of part of our culture. And as we are still developing, I think currently this kind of employer identity, the best people who know exactly what it's like to work here and can actually comment on these things is the 2,400 people that work with us now. And at the beginning of this year, we actually did some research with our own employees, asking them to highlight the things that they find the most unique about working at Luminor, what makes Luminor stand out to them as an employer. And these are exactly the things that you see on the slide. So not going through all of them as you can read, but probably some of the things that I will also comment from my side is that we have, for example, number one thing I think for me as well is this autonomy. And there's a reason why it's probably the biggest word on the slide and most people highlight it, is that we are this pan-Baltic organization. We don't have mother processes that are passed down to you. And what that means in kind of practical life is that you often have to come in and really figure things out sometimes for yourself and have the ability to put something together in place and really implement it yourself. And Luminor is the place where you have the option and the environment to do that, which creates quite an interesting working atmosphere, I think, on a daily basis. The second thing probably that I also from my own experience feel quite a lot at work is the challenge part of it. So also going back to the fact that we don't have anything that is like set in stone, passed down to us. it is the case that all of our decision making is here in the Baltics. All of our products are developed in the Baltics, and that can often also present some challenges. But I think that if we acknowledge the fact that it might not be for everyone, if you are the person that really likes to come in and take ownership and really lead your area, then Luminor provides an excellent platform for you to be able to do that. And the third thing that I will accent a little bit more of the informal aspect of it is this international environment. And why I accent it is when you are, or when I was working, for example, in London, we have so many different nationalities, and you are kind of almost like aware that everyone will be extremely different, and you are accustomed to it. And as yes, we have quite a few nationalities working in Luminor, but when I first came in, I remember, you know, thinking that it will be Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, and to me, it was like, I imagined that, you know, Baltic people, they will all be relatively similar. And actually, this is something that I have learned from my perspective, that there's quite a lot of differences between Latvians, Estonians, and Lithuanians, I find. And the actual culture part of it and exploring how different we are is something that I didn't expect, but have been pleasantly surprised to learn more about. And exactly how we are different is not something that I can say at the moment. I'm still very much trying to analyze it myself. I know that, you know, I can establish now that definitely there's differences, but what exactly these differences are, I really hope to actually be able to say a bit later and put a pin on it. So yes, so that is kind of what I wanted to talk about a little bit, but really open up for Q&A. And hear from people what's interested.
Okay, our crowd is a little bit silent today, so I will use this time to throw my own questions. You know, after listening to so many meet and greets, maybe I will start thinking about changing my job soon. So I was thinking here. I see some of the, for example, some of the let's say like specifics of about working at Luminor, like autonomy or challenge or international environment. So this is, as I understand, this is a status quo, right? Like it is right now. But as we were speaking at the beginning, that if you want to change the working culture and change the mindset into growing rather than into kind of handling the merger process, so you probably will need some other qualities too infiltrated. So are you thinking of, like, are you planning on some infiltrating, like, new qualities of people? What are you going to look for?
I think overall it would be quite too soon to say something very specific. I think what's important to note is that through the changes that we have come already, our people are very adaptable. And that also means that they themselves are, you know, also open and adaptable to changes. So let's see how it goes. I think that one step at a time is probably the best way to go.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm actually curious about your hiring, like policies. For example, like, do you have let's say one HR department which hires people for all the subsidiaries, like Lithuania, Latvia, Baltics, or is a separate thing? So, like, if I'm applying to Luminor bank, does that mean that I'm gonna work in Lithuania only, or that could be like the place is gonna be like Latvia or Estonia or somewhere else?
So I would say it depends on the area. For the most part, most of our teams are working in a Pan-Baltic principle. And what that means is that a lot of the time when we find that we have a vacancy, we will do the search in all 3 countries. And where the specialist has the best fit, then this is the area where we will hire someone. So we do most of our hiring in a centralized way.
Okay. Now coming back to actually your own experience as being kind of a second generation living in like now currently coming back to Lithuania, your personal story is rather different from Mindaugas and Andrius' story, because having been born in the United States, and I suppose does your still family live in the United Kingdom?
They've moved back now, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you showed an example, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so for you, it was not coming back, but for you, it was actually emigrating, right? Moving to Lithuania. So what would be your advices for people who are actually either never lived in Lithuania or they haven't lived in Lithuania for a long time, and they're kind of thinking about moving here? What would be like the main 3 steps that you have to make to take care of to land more smooth?
I think the decision that you want to come back needs to be made first, and it can be done from like many different perspectives, but you have to want to come back. And then when you want to try something new or change where you're living now, then there's a variety of steps that you can take to set up like the smoothest possible kind of landing, as you said. So when I was living in London, I didn't know, I was 6 years, I had no idea about what was going on in the Lithuanian job market.
Exactly.
So it's about research, actually. And I think that you need to understand the fact that it's not the same as it was even 2 years ago. And the market is very, very changing very quickly. And just keeping up to date, even events like this is actually how I found my first job in Lithuania. So there was like a hiring fair in the embassy in London that I went to and spoke to, to people, and just kind of try to really feel out what is the temperature of the job market, what are the opportunities that are there, and probably speaking to people who have done it before can help quite a lot. And then when you're back, there's a few secrets that I have developed over the years. One of which is pre-COVID state. I think it's still important to travel outside of Lithuania. And for me personally, the time frame is 2 months. You can stay for 2 months. And if every 2 months you go even to like for a weekend somewhere else, you come back with these burning eyes like, oh my God, I really am so excited to be back home. But if you are here for such an extensive amount of time, then it can, get a little bit overwhelming. So keeping these paths between where you used to be as well is quite important.
Well, actually, now that we're mentioned it, this is probably a good time to advertise your own blog, right? Because you're writing a blog about your travels. Can you write down what the address here in the chat?
Sure, yeah. So I can put it here, but very business related. It's actually called Often Out of Office. So I will put it here. But yes, we created the platform for people to be able to organize themselves, kind of exploring the world and making sure that they know where they are going when they go to a specific destination, and don't have to end up, for example, walking down the street and sitting in the first restaurant that you see, but rather doing research beforehand in the easiest way possible.
So Peter is actually asking, do people smile more in Lithuania than they did before? What do you think?
Yes, yes, they do. I remember the times where when I lived in London, I had many friends from the UK, and everyone had always said, you know, you look always so angry. Why are you so angry all of the time? And then when I brought them to Lithuania, there was this moment where, oh, it's not only you, it's like everyone in this country. But definitely a lot more smiles now. It's changing.
There's one thing that I see, that people started to say hello to other people. You know, I remember, you know, coming from America and then coming to Lithuania, and it's like, hello, what?
What do you want from me?
What do you want from me? Yeah, exactly. But in the last couple of years, actually, I see that you meet people and they say hello. You know, it's how are you? So yeah.
So yeah, thank you. We still have 5 minutes, right? But talking about the same experience of smiles, actually, I found it like talking to people who from the diaspora who come to Lithuania. They say the importance of social network in Lithuania, like not only having colleagues, but also having some friends or acquaintances to go out with. How did you deal with that? Or do you have any advices? I'm sorry.
There's a few network groups that I think are quite good to connect with. So it will be the same people who have lived somewhere abroad and come back. And once you find someone, even who is working, for example, in your office, there's this automatic, I think, connection that you tend to have. But there are a few good Facebook groups available, definitely for, like, for example, World Economic Forum has quite a good network of people who are very eager to, you know, do initiatives like Rotary or Rotaract clubs as well. I actually discovered yesterday that there's a Latinos in Lithuania group on Facebook of people from South America who are living in Lithuania, which was not something that I had found before. So, so various groups to join. Yeah,
it's probably this diversity that you might miss a little bit in Lithuania, right? Diversity of people.
Yes, but it's changing, I think, now. In the just coming from a female perspective. There's actually a female network that has a club everywhere in most major cities in the world called Girl God International. And there's a very active group in Lithuania with people from all over the world, actually, citizens of all different countries who do active meetups and things. So you need to find it, but once you find it, you'll be fine.
Okay, so basically, it changes, like direction changes while you are abroad. You are trying to find people from your own country, and then when you come back, you are trying to find people who are from abroad to have this kind of diversity that you got used to already. So, and the last question from Simas, and actually this is one that I also intended to ask. He asks, like, who could you compare working at Luminor with your previous experiences here in Lithuania? And probably this is a question also related to the comparison of the public and private sectors, because I think that well, like, how do you, culturally wise, how do you find the difference? And
so I would say there are two probably major differences. When I decided to join the public sector, it was very much for the purpose that I really wanted to have, like, this direct contact of creating Lithuania and helping the development. And when you work in the public sector, you have probably this more like closer, direct contact to how you're helping the country. Because you're working on, yes, perhaps a piece of paper that is a law that it looks like a piece of paper, but when it comes into effect, it has immediate effect on all people in Lithuania, for example. And with working in the private sector, you're just, creating Lithuania, but in a little bit of a different way. And then the second difference is with the management maturity, I would say. So it's probably, quite a well-known fact at this point that there are quite some room for improvements in terms of management in the public sector. And there are excellent examples of how we have very good management in some institutions already, and very, very good teams who are doing great things, but a lot of room for improvement. Whereas the private sector obviously has a lot more mature management kind of styles and practices, and it's been around for a bit longer, I would say. So those would be the two main things.
Okay, so no matter how much I would want to continue our conversation, and it pops in my mind that we should organize some kind of maybe event, online cocktail party for people who had just came back to Lithuania to share their experiences more. And maybe to help each other, like only by knowing that you are not the only person who is facing those problems. So, and the last, the question surprise for you is, when was the last time you asked for help to someone?
Probably today.
What did you ask?
So I have, I think, at least from my perspective, the team at Luminor that we have established over the past year is very, very close, actually, and working in this online way, which we have been doing pretty much since March. Actually, we kind of never came back in the summertime. One of the things that we see is that we really miss each other from a very, personal perspective. And we do also in professional life share quite a lot of things. When we have someone is really busy doing something, we ask for help from each other. So I think this is something that naturally happens every day, actually, in our team.
Good. And before we finish completely, I was going to ask, so what's now? Like, what if I want to, I got interested of like Luminor or like working in Lithuania. How can people contact you, or how do they follow Luminor, or how maybe they can leave their contact somewhere so they could, like, what do you suggest?
So 3 things I will say. The best place to look for active job ads, if it's something that you're specifically interested in, is our career page. In the career page also, if you see or if you don't see anything that you're specifically interested now, but you would like to stay up to date in terms of new positions that come up, there is a connect feature, so you can connect with Luminor, express your interest, which areas you are interested in, and then you will be updated every time we have a new vacancy come up. And then also LinkedIn is probably the third option, where I would suggest to follow Luminor Group's page and kind of what news we have going on. And if a personal touch is what someone is looking for, then I suggest to connect with me. I'm very active on LinkedIn. And I can then direct in either direction or answer any very informal questions about moving back if it's needed.
Great, thank you. Thank you. I think that's very useful, actually. So this is it, 2 minutes after, like we've started 5 minutes after. And that was, thank you to all the panelists, and congratulations to Andrius, who escaped my surprise question. And this is probably our last meet and greet event this year. because we are now entering the Global Lithuanian Award season. At the end of the year, we will announce the nominees, and this year we will have not one event, but we will have the whole month of Global Lithuanian Awards. So I encourage everyone. We are now in the process of nominations, meaning that everyone can nominate diaspora people or global Lithuanians who had done something significant for Lithuania during the last year. So we have a page, GLL-awards.com, where you can nominate outstanding personalities. And I thank you everyone for participating, even so quiet, but I saw that people stayed on the event, and I hope it was interesting for you. Thank you. Have a good evening. Stay well and stay healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you.